12 high-level seminar on peace and security in Africa, the Oran process, have welcomed the continuous process as well as the contribution to shaping a common African vision to address the continent's issues and challenges. The head of the African Union Commission, Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, has affirmed that the A3+ group within the UN Security Council was more than a mechanism of coordination and a unique bridge between the international order and the continental architecture. The Secretariat of the African Union Mechanism for Police Cooperation is holding the 6th meeting of the heads of Afripol national liaison offices here in Algiers. Hello and welcome to Radio Algeria International. I'm Jamal Samani. Here in Algiers, the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, has received the head of the African Union Commission, Mahmoud Ali Yusuf. In a statement to the press, the AU senior official hailed the President's vision regarding Algeria's social and economic development plans, as well as regarding the various crises besetting Africa.
I have the great honor of being received by His Excellency President Abdelmajid Tebboune, President of the Republic of Algeria, and I listened to him at length. He's a man of vast experience. I enjoyed his insightful perspective, first regarding how to develop this country economically and socially. It could also serve as a model for other applications in other African countries. I also listened to him on Algeria's viewpoint regarding the crises affecting the African continent, especially in the Sahel countries. It was indeed an exchange of opinions. I also benefited from his perspectives on how to address these crises.
Now, he also underlined that the Commission was examining introducing reforms within the AU's working system in order to improve the performance of the organization's bodies, such as the African Union Police Cooperation Mechanism based here in Algiers. The 12th high-level seminar on peace and security in Africa resumed Monday afternoon behind closed doors at the Abdellatif Rahali International Conference Center here in Algiers, with a particular focus on African mechanisms to combat terrorism and violent extremism. The afternoon's closed working session highlighted the theme measures taken by the African Union and the UN in response to terrorism and violent extremism, with the main presentation delivered by the acting director of the African Center for Studies and Research on Terrorism, Idris Lalali. Discussions mainly focus on the importance of strengthening regional and international coordination in the fight against terrorism and on the need to develop common strategies to address a threat that undermines the security and stability of the African continent. The participants to the 12th high-level seminar on peace and security in Africa, the Oran process, have welcomed at the Abdellatif Rahali International Conference Center the continuous process as well as its contribution to shaping a common African vision to address the continent's issues and challenges. The details with Mohamed Khatel.
The Minister of Foreign Affairs, Migration and Tunisians Abroad, Mr. Marwan Al-Nafti, expressed his pleasure in taking part in this event, which he described as important. He recalled that Tunisia has contributed since the 1960s with its diplomatic wisdom and military capabilities to the establishment and maintenance of peace and security in Africa, and continues with greater determination and will to assume its responsibilities towards the continent. The Tunisian minister also affirmed that his country began the struggle alongside Algeria, adding that since the creation of the Organization of African Unity and later the African Union, Algeria and Tunisia have always stood side by side and will continue to fully play their role in achieving peace, security, prosperity and well-being across the continent. He noted that Tunisia shares several common denominators with Algeria and many other African countries. For his part, the African Union representative to the United Nations in New York, Mohamed Idris, stated that the African continent is facing multiple, significant and even highly complex challenges in matters of peace and security. He emphasized the need for mobilization and unified efforts to discuss these issues with full transparency and clarity and to seek African solutions to African problems. He added that this high-level seminar, the Iran process, greatly contributes to developing a common African vision to act upon and address these issues, noting that such meetings help move forward in finding solutions to these numerous and multiple and complex challenges. According to Mohammed Idris, the situation in the Sahel region threatens peace and security across the entire African continent, and the region includes several countries suffering from multiple and complex problems related to development, terrorism, and particularly climate change. He recalled that despite the long-standing interest of the United Nations and various African and non-African actors in the region, these multiple visions have unfortunately not yet led to solutions to complex and worsening problems in the area. Stressing that the Algiers Conference represents an important opportunity to review what has been done, what has not been done, and to reflect on what must be undertaken in the next phase. In this context, the ambassador and permanent representative of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, DRC, to the United Nations, Zenon Mukongo Ngei, affirmed that this high-level seminar, launched in Algiers a few years ago, continues to this day in order to find solutions to the continent's problems. He also highlighted that efforts to strengthen cooperation between the A3 group, made up of Algeria, Sierra Leone, and Somalia, and the African Union's Peace and Security Council will help enhance Africa's agenda on the international stage.
Now, the Minister in charge of Foreign Affairs, National Community Abroad and African Affairs, Mr. Ahmed Attaf, has received a number of African Union officials as well as African counterparts on the sidelines of the 12th high-level seminar on peace and security in Africa, or Iran process. The details with Masoud Sharfi.
Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf has received the African Union Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security, Bankole Adeoye, during the meeting, which focused on ways to strengthen the capabilities of the AU in the face of current challenges in peace and security. Mr. Attaf reaffirmed Algeria's constant and unwavering support for all efforts aimed at designing and implementing African solutions to African problems. For his part, the AU Commissioner hailed Algeria's role in the United Nations Security Council in defending the causes and priorities of the African continent, as well as its significant contribution to strengthening a joint African action.
We discussed also the issues in the region as well as across the continent, and agreed that it was necessary to maintain the momentum of African Union visibility, inclusivity, partnership within the UN Security Council, where Algeria will be concluding a very momentous two-year term as an elected member of the UN Security Council. We want to take this opportunity to appreciate the government and people of Algeria for the support to the African Union, particularly its Commission and our Department of Political Affairs, Peace and Security, on promoting stability on our continent. Algeria has been a force for good, and we really want to continue that partnership to ensure that we have all the necessary tools in promoting our norms and ensuring that we silence the guns, and we also promote democracy, good governance, and stability on our continent.
The Algerian foreign minister also had a meeting with the president of the African Union Commission, Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, during which they examined the latest developments in the political and security situation on the African continent, including the Sahel-Saharan region and the issue of Western Sahara, and highlighted the additional challenges posed by the complexity of the current international context. On the sidelines of the 12th high-level seminar on peace and security in Africa, Iran process, Mr. Attaf received Western Sahara's Foreign Minister Mohammed Yeslam Baysat. The two ministers exchanged views and analyses about the latest developments in the Sahrawi question and discussed ways and means to enable the Sahrawi people to exercise their right to self-determination in accordance with the relevant United Nations resolutions, in particular Resolution 2797, recently adopted by the UN Security Council.
The 12th session of the high-level seminar on peace and security in Africa continues today, Tuesday, in Algiers for its second and final day. On the second day, participants presented a review of the A3 Plus activities, lessons learned and future prospects, and also discussed the AU Peace and Security Council and A3 Plus, a stronger voice for UN Security Council reform. On the first day of the Iran 2025 process, two closed-door sessions were devoted to the themes the global landscape of peace and security in Africa, current dynamics, and concerted action by the AU and the UN on combating terrorism and violent extremism. The conference was attended by the Minister of State, Minister of Foreign Affairs and National Community Abroad and African Affairs, Mr. Ahmad Attaf, as well as the Secretary of State to the Minister of Foreign Affairs in charge of African Affairs, Ms. Selma Bakhta-Mansouri. In his opening speech, Mr. Attaf called on his African counterparts to use the new edition of the Oran process as an opportunity to renew their commitment, to redouble their efforts to develop African solutions to African problems. The Algerian diplomat's chief emphasized in this context the need to renew the commitment to advocate with one voice for Africa's priorities at the Security Council in all multilateral reforms. The State Secretary for Foreign Affairs responsible or in charge of African Affairs, Ms. Selma Bakhta-Mansouri, received the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Arab Republic of Egypt, Mr. Abu Bakr Hafni, on the sidelines of the participation in the 12th edition of the High-Level Conference on Peace and Security in Africa. This meeting provided an opportunity to reaffirm the strong historical ties between the two countries and their peoples, review the progress made in bilateral cooperation in various fields, exchange views on a number of African issues of common concern, and emphasize the need to continue coordination and consultation on crises in the African continent. Now, the head of the African Union Commission, Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, has affirmed that the A3+ group within the UN Security Council was more than a mechanism of coordination, as it constitutes the core of the African multilateralism and a unique bridge between the international order and the continental architecture. Mr. Sharfi again.
Addressing a high-level seminar on peace and security in Africa, known as the Oran process, he stated that the weakening of the United Nations founding consensus allows the A3 group, bringing together Algeria, Somalia, and Sierra Leone and Guyana, to act as an indispensable hyphen among rivalries between the world powers. The head of the AU Commission stressed that the A3 group contributed to preserving multilateralism, defending the UN Charter, and averting the marginalization of Africa during international debates. In this respect, he insisted on the necessity to reinforce coordination between the UN and AU, while underlining that a unified position is not a political choice, but a strategic imperative. The senior AU official described Resolution 2719 as an essential tool so that the UN-AU partnership more predictable, more coherent and better structured. Regarding security, he denounced the resurgence of terrorism in the Sahel, the Horn of Africa, in the Lake Chad Basin, and Mozambique, urging the UN Security Council to fully assume its responsibility, notably by reinforcing prevention and supporting regional institutions to fight transnational threats. It is worth noting that consultations were held between the A3 group's member countries and the new members, namely the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Liberia, Bahrain, Colombia, and Latvia. During the meeting held at the initiative of Algeria, they exchanged views and shared their expertise on how to reinforce cooperation between the UN Security Council's elected members.
The Sahrawi Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Mohamed Yeslim Baysat, has stated here in Algiers that peace and security in Africa depend on the elimination of the last strongholds of colonialism. In a statement to the Algerian press agency APS on the sidelines of the 12th High-Level Seminar on Peace and Security in Africa, the Sahrawi minister stressed the need to complete decolonization in Africa through the resolution of the Sahrawi question. In this context, he recalled the recommendation of African heads of state and government on silencing guns, which calls for direct negotiations between the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic and the Kingdom of Morocco to undermine the arrangements and conditions necessary for holding a referendum on self-determination for the people of Western Sahara. The Algiers Declaration, issued at the end of the International Conference on Colonial Crimes in Africa, has called for the proclamation of November 30 as the African Day of Tribute to the martyrs and victims of the transatlantic slave trade, colonization and apartheid, as proposed by the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmadjid Tebboune. Masoud Sharfi.
The participants to the conference affirmed their support for the proposal of the President of the Republic and expressed deep gratitude to the President for his initiative and warmly thanking the Algerian government and people for their fraternal welcome and support in making the Algiers conference a success. The Algiers Declaration is a key step in recognizing colonial crimes and establishing African mechanisms for memory, truth, justice and reparation. Based on President Abdelmajid Tebboun's proposal at the African Union AU Summit, it will be submitted to the 39th AU Summit in February 2026 to secure the criminalization of colonialism. It urges former colonial powers to acknowledge past injustices, calls for Pan-African digital archives, revised curricula and new memorials, and recommends national truth and reparation commissions within AU member states and a Pan-African Committee on Memory and Historical Truth. The declaration addresses colonialism's environmental, cultural and economic impacts, calling for a continental ecological assessment, an African environmental justice platform, restitution of cultural resources, a continental economic audit, and reform of global governance, including the International Monetary Fund, IMF, World Bank, and other bodies to increase Africa's decision-making power. It also proposes a Pan-African Committee on Memory and Historical Truth, National Truth and Reparation Commissions within AU member states, educational reform, Pan-African digital archives, revised curricula and memorials, museums and commemorative days. African researchers in international law emphasized in Algiers the imperative of establishing institutions and legal mechanisms in Africa to ensure better claims for reparations for injustices committed by former colonizers.
You're still listening to Radio Algeria International. This is the English service. The Secretariat of the African Union Mechanism for Police Cooperation, AFRIPOL, is holding the 6th meeting of the heads of AFRIPOL national liaison offices here in Algiers. During the 3-day meeting, delegates are informed about the various initiatives aimed at supporting and strengthening the capacities of national liaison offices. Our reporter Mohamed Khatel covered the opening of the event.
The national liaison offices play an important role, and so does the General Assembly, which is responsible for ensuring communication through the Secretariat with the various liaison offices regarding AFRIPOL activities. The 6th meeting of the heads of AFRIPOL national liaison offices brings together the AFRIPOL Secretariat, the heads of AFRIPOL's national liaison offices, and delegates from the organs of the African Union and international police organizations. Over these 3 days, delegates will be briefed on various initiatives aimed at supporting and strengthening the capacities of the national liaison offices. These initiatives include operational and investigative support, improved use of databases, and the expansion of communication systems. It's worth noting that the 3-day meeting will discuss important topics to the continent, such as transnational organized crime, terrorism, human trafficking and drug trafficking, among other topics, which constitute a main challenge to all member states. From Golden Tulip Hotel, Mohamed Khatel for Radio Algeria International.
Meanwhile, the executive director of AFRIPOL, Jalal Shalaba, talked about uniting efforts to combat organized crime and terrorism, as well as the expected structural reform of AFRIPOL to upgrade it from a mechanism within the African Union to a body of the African Union.
It is an essential moment for assessing our progress, deepening our coordination and collectively shaping the way forward. As the operational backbone of AFRIPOL, the NLO remains indispensable to the fulfillment of our mandate and to the effectiveness of our continental response to security challenges. This meeting takes place at a particularly important moment. AFRIPOL is advancing a major institutional transformation aimed at strengthening its structure, capability, and long-term contribution to Africa's security architecture.
Let's recall that the final version of the process will be approved at the meeting of the African Defense and Interior Ministers to be held in Addis Ababa next Monday. The Algerian-Belarus Economic Forum held here in Algiers has offered a space for the two sides to examine ways of reinforcing economic partnership and reiterate their will to extend the trade and investment cooperation prospects. The meeting was supervised by the Trade and National Market Regulation Minister Abdelatif and the Belarus Trade Regulation Artur Karbovich. The Algerian minister stressed that the forum was part of Algeria and Belarus' commitment to devote a strategic vision for deepening economic partnership. The Belarus minister, for her part, affirmed that the forum, the second of the like, was particularly important as it took place within a historic framework, marked by the first official visit to be made by the Belarus and occurred 30 years after the two countries set up their diplomatic relations. You're still listening to Radio Algeria International. Today we are celebrating the International Day for the Abolition of Slavery. Next is a program to celebrate this day.
Hello and welcome to this program. Today, we pause to remember. Today, we reflect on one of the darkest and most painful chapters in human history. One of the largest forced migrations in history, the transatlantic slave trade spanned over 400 years, uprooting millions of men, women and children. Torn from their families, they were shackled, branded and crammed onto ships bound for a life of suffering. Stripped of their humanity, their voices were silenced and their identities were erased. But in the midst of this horror, there were also resistance, survival, and an unbreakable will to be free. The enslaved stories are not just ones of suffering, but also of strength, resilience, and the determination to reclaim their dignity.
Even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident.